So there's big news out in the search sphere. By the time you've listened to this, you're probably already so sick of hearing about this idea. But every SEO in the world is talking about it. But we're here to join the fray with some high quality content of our own in audio form, which has been done a little less. So we're talking Google's helpful content update that is coming in the next couple weeks. Whenever you listen to this, probably could be close to getting started as based on what Google has said. So for those who have been living under a rock, Drew, what is the Google helpful content update?
Yeah, so on August 18th, last week, today's the 22nd for those of you listening in real time. Ross, they put out this thing about people first content. Avoid creating content for search engines first. So don't be too SEO minded in your content, which basically is just a recitation of the same thing, slightly different. Really, it's are you authoritative in your content? Are you the right person to be talking about this? Which and they basically say like don't follow on a niche and just for the sake of it, which hopefully we're not doing here, Ross. And while I have had my hypotheses that you might be AI and this is bot content, I don't think it is, but
We're restating the search engine results on this podcast. Hopefully, we would get penalized for
right.
it.
But so Ross, what do you think Google is doing here? What are they trying to fix for? And anything you can see through the cracks, through the lines here?
Yeah, it's interesting reading the in depth on every single sentence they write in these updates. There's definitely thoughtfulness to it. I would hope. And my first instinct in reading this update, honestly, I was like, wow, this is huge. It's going to change everything. You feel, I mean, even the words helpful content, it feels like it touched everything. And after kind of like sitting on this, sleeping on it over the weekend a little bit, I don't think it's quite that big. We'll see for sure. But the sense from reading the update, you see some repetition of words on certain things that talk about automation and high volume content and going after Google Trends type content just for the sake of it, and also going broad and trying to tackle things that are not even relevant for your domain. And if you kind of dig into some of these query types and you pull up the sites and you look for what they're kind of identifying, something that I've noticed is there's a trend about these sites. They tend to be very low quality websites that are spun up, likely from a bot or purchase domain, maybe with some kind of existing authority. And then they use an AI writing tool to be able to create content super fast. And what's new about this is that you couldn't do that before. You could just put up crappy low quality content, but maybe you just get a couple dozen posts live. Now you can literally get thousands of posts live. So it's like throwing stuff on a chalkboard, like throwing help me with this analogy, Drew.
Excrement on a
What
wall and
is
see what sticks.
it? Yes, sure. That works. That works.
Put it
So you
nicely.
do that, and yeah, and it's pretty successful on average. And what Panda, their old algorithm, used to do, it still does, to my knowledge, will be if you're ranking for something and it's low quality, eventually they'll get signals based on how you interact with the search results to say this is not good quality, we should hurt this site. But what these new sites are doing is they're ranking so fast that and it's all so low quality and so low cost. So they don't care if I mean, they'd like the site to not get hit, don't get me wrong. But my sense is it's not the end of the world if these sites get hit. They will get hit, but they're alive for like 3 months. And we'll share a screenshot in the show notes. We have this just one of many case studies that we could find of sites with 250,000 visits reported in Ahrefs a month of just pure arts and entertainment, long tail type traffic that's not good. So my sense is this is the exploit that these AI tools have allowed is you could buy an expired domain with maybe even moderate domain rating, throw up tons of different legs at different topics. Some will stick, and that will really make Google and has made Google's results crappy. So that in reading this update, it feels like that's what they're trying to solve. I don't know. I could be wrong. What's your feeling in hearing that, Drew?
Yeah, I guess the first question for you to push back, or does this also incorporate any sites that maybe just throw up a bunch of landing pages. The first thing that comes to mind is like a crypto market website, like Coin Market Cap or something, where they're just generating a ton of content using an API of some sort. Do you think this hurts them?
I think so. Yeah, I probably shouldn't say it's only isolated to this vertical. For sure, they have come out, um, to your point, Drew, and they mentioned it could be arts and entertainment, online education, um, a few other industries. So it could. Oh, product. I think e-commerce shopping is how they described it.
Mhm.
So potentially shopping for crypto could impact that too, Drew. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think, their don't use extensive automation was one of their points, and it's, I think, more about writing, with humans in mind, right, like being a human if you're writing the post. Also, they say don't summarize what other people are saying, and I think a lot of these AI generated content tools kind of just regurgitate, respin what other people have been writing about targeting that keyword. And so, in this, one of my takeaways is basically something we've been doing for a long time, which is always look to add more value than what others are doing in search. So whether it be adding additional downloadable PDFs or resources or a calculator in the SERP or in on the page, that's kind of how we look to elevate content. Does that strike a bell with you?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something these AI tools, as smart as they may seem to be, they don't seem capable yet of doing that. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe that'll come eventually. But you do see that on these tools, and it makes sense that they kind of regurgitate the same things, which aren't great. These sites are kind of made to do that. So it's interesting. So, I mean, on that note, and like, even if this is the big problem they're trying to solve, who knows if it is? And maybe these crypto sites are another example of big problems that we're seeing as well. What are those things that maybe could have collateral damage over to us or to like maybe sites doing it well? Like, are they certain like putting knobs up and down that are trying to really knock those sites, but might knock us a little bit too? That's the general sense that I feel like come to now is that it's not the end of the world that's coming. It's just more could there be subtle changes? And your 2 were great ones there, Drew. Some other subtle ones I thought of that we've been talking to our team about. It's just like keyword density and titles. Could any of SEO written that title? Like, think about, are you really in depth into this industry? A common example I like to give is like Wealthfront Review. It's the best robo advisor or something like that. Like, you wouldn't use the word robo advisor unless you really kind of knew the vertical. So not any SEO probably could have written that. To my knowledge. And then keyword density and H2s. You see that on some of these very bad arts and entertainment sites that are trying to rank for things like House of Cards season 8, and there is no season 8. They are just stuffing each H2, and that's the entire post. So if you are not adding any kind of user-friendly H2s that add value, and to your point, like are finding new things to add to the post, Drew, that could get caught in the crossfire here, I believe, and potentially be part of that problem.
Yeah, and I think speaking of collateral damage, they mentioned how it might be or removing unhelpful content could help the rankings of your other content. They were very clear about that. And so if you haven't been following a content strategy that kind of sticks close to your core competency as a business, then it might be time to reevaluate whether those pages are going to pull you down in search as compared to going after topics that maybe have a little less search volume but are super relevant to your business and are only going to add to that domain authority.
Yeah, for sure. And that's some of these things were interesting. I think they're all really good notes from Google, and who knows how this will go. Something like I think of these news sites, what they'll do very often is they'll look at the Google Trends searches and just throw up whatever that says. So you can see how that splinters into tons of different topics that make no sense that potentially Google could pick up on. We did do some deep dives on some like sites, and maybe they talk about 3 topics that are a little off topic. I wouldn't stress too much about that. It doesn't hurt to cut your content, and we're using this as a kind of a reminder. You literally pulled content data, audit data for our clients last week, independent of this, because it's just helpful. Period. So if anything, this is maybe just a good reminder, even if it wasn't important for this, to get that content audit done.
Yeah, and Ross, they mentioned word count being, something that a lot of SEOs look to optimize for, and then they specifically say we don't prioritize word count. So how do you think about that and what they're trying to get towards, again, writing for humans, not for search engines?
I would think some of these AI shortcutters are doing the bare minimum. So they know, like, the old recommendation used to be like 300 words would make your content seem unique. Now you hear things like 1,000 words are what tends to rank in Google. If I was one of those people that was being lazy, I'd probably do 1,000 each time to hit that bare minimum. So I think a lot of those kind of sites are one of those site wide signals Google could look for. They did state in the article that this is going to be a site wide thing that they will look at. So if you saw that commonality across the site, potentially could be bad for you if you're kind of trying to take those shortcuts. Which, to your point, you're probably not thinking about user experience and doing what's right for the each search result if you're just relying on let's hit 1,000 words each time.
But just to clarify for myself, really, you still think because I know when I look at a search results page and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write a piece of content to compete here. I almost say to myself, this is what is the minimum viable piece of content that Google's looking for. And I should probably look to at least match. And then back to my earlier point, elevate the content in some way by providing additional resources. So do you still think word count will be an important factor?
I think so. I mean, I could be reading this incorrectly, but my interpretation is kind of the older school take, which was what is the minimum viable amount of words you need to be seen as unique to Google? Not what is the topic. You're doing the really user friendly way of thinking about it, which I don't know that the average site does. Like when you're talking about that crypto site, Drew, like one coin versus another, and they do thousands of permutations of that, they're likely not doing that SERP analysis. They're just trying to get to that minimum viable. I would guess these arts and entertainment sites are like that too. So I think it's still good what you're doing in that thought process that we use for our clients. But I could be wrong. I don't think they would be hurting people for being in a range of what's already present in the search result. But I'm open to your opinion and curious if you think you read it differently.
No, I think you're on the right point, on the right track there. But also, you had brought up something to me before the call about an article you had read about content solving the problem, not just answering the query. What can you kind of explain that article and maybe shout out the author? And since I can't pronounce their name, I don't even want to try. But
Yes, Marat, probably will also Marat G, director of SEO at Red Ventures, great company, posted a post that is a good way of thinking about this. Is that Google called this out in the article? Is you want to satisfy users. You don't want to make them go back to search results, search other things. So in essence, what you're trying to do is not give them the just the answer. You want to help solve the problem they're coming for. So the great analogy that he used was if you search for best quarter inch drill, you're not looking for a drill. What you're trying to do is mount a TV most of the time, right? Quarter inch drill. So what you're trying to get to is not just the what, you want the why behind the concept. There's a great little graphic that we'll share on the in this post, but I think that's it's a good other way to kind of I think if anything a reminder. Hopefully some of this comes naturally when you're trying to do the value add stuff, but not just give the quick answer, but try to solve their problem in the article as well. So take it further, and that's probably something an AI article is not going to do.
love that. So, what then, with this in mind, Ross, would be your overall recommendation for this Google update? Do you have any thoughts on the time horizon? I know they said they're going to start rolling it out this week. So yeah, what are your overarching recommendations here?
Hard to say when they're rolling out. I think a lot of that is a guess potentially. Probably right before this publishes would be my guess. But the what or our overall recommendation with update, it's actually unusual that we'd even talk about an update. This felt big enough that we would do it. Is most of the time don't care about it. So our thought process is there will be swings of 5 to 15% that happen with updates, but what matters is the long-term trajectory and trend line. So look at that trend line for your site if that's still tracking positively, don't worry about that. Like one site could have barely been ticked up positively above you and seen a bump and that made that tweak. Those kinds of things can happen. And maybe they overall still see you as a very quality site. So if that's the case, like don't stress about that minor change that has a possibility of happening even if you're a great site. So that's how I would think about this. If it's bigger, totally understandable. I would definitely do an in-depth content audit. We've been pushing that more. We're especially pushing that now with this change. But yeah, and hopefully, if you're already thinking this way, we're already planning a party later this week. So
You're like the Warren
hopefully, we'll be able
Buffett
to
of
celebrate.
SEO and content. So is this like the annual shareholders meeting party that we're having, or what's?
Yeah, we're just buying and holding. That's the party. I meant to celebrate positive upticks from this, but
Yeah,
maybe I should knock on wood on that one a little bit.
I feel very confident in what we've been doing over the last few years, like is trending in this direction of where Google is going. And it makes me feel a whole lot of job security and warmth in my heart because AI bots are not coming for my job anytime soon.
Yeah, thankfully, AI. We looked at those tools. We just never got there. Honestly, I see that there's value in the like outline writing and some of that, I guess, but maybe they're over optimizing H2s. Some of it just felt like you go too much in that direction. Not good things are gonna like you'll start thinking differently, and even if it can save you some time, is the thinking differently negative enough that it's worth adding to your tool set? I'm still not sure. So we'll see how the dust settles after this.
Yeah, and if I could just recap my takeaways, it seems like Google's looking to, make sure that you are writing about the topics that you're authoritative in. Don't follow trends. Like if you're in personal finance, like deeply consider whether you should go after crypto and Web3. That's just an analogy. I don't know. I can't speak to your business or your content specifically. Do a content audit. Look for where you can remove that extra weight that could be really just bringing you down, not adding any value. Add as much like value as you can in your content. Don't just summarize what people have already said. Answer the why and provide as much resource as you can for solving their actual underlying problem in question. And yeah, just like don't really be a search engine optimizer, be a content creator. And I think we have a great post by Michaela Wong on some of the best practices there on her Vines model of video, images, news, experts, and social. I don't know, Ross, you want to quickly talk about that article or add any color there?
Yeah, that's a great call out. That really those two things of going deeper in terms of solving the query and then or solving the problem, not the query, and then this Vines concept are two of the reminders we're most kind of like bringing up to our team in the last week or two. The Vines concept, as Michaela brought up, is just the idea of how you go deeper in terms of getting better research for your content that looks outside the search result. So video is like look at the video tab, go to YouTube, Google that keyword or search that keyword on those things and see how people are talking about it. Go to the images tab, look at how people are visualizing this idea or their new differentiated ways. Look at news, see how they're talking about it. Is there anything breaking, data studies, etc. Talk to experts, see what think of this concept. Reach out to them. Maybe there's something new that none of these other things would even surface if you didn't just straight ask someone about it. And then search on social, go to relevant networks for your industry and look up those same concepts, and you might find something breaking there as well. And this should all add up to hopefully a differentiated piece of content from what is existing for sure.
I love that. And I think I'll end on this, I think, hilarious takeaway from this post by Google. They're like, don't do extensive automation. Definitely do not do that. And then they're like, how are we going to roll this out? Machine learning. We're going to automate the hell out of this thing.
Best way to prevent robots is more robots.
Yeah. Turns out that's the infinite loop that we're going through.